Hello everyone, Mav Hunter here from the YouTube channel Mav's Outdoor Adventures. Well, I'm here in central Arizona over the holidays, and last week I did a little Coues deer hunting with my archery, with my over-the-counter archery tag for 2023. I saw some nice deer, saw a lot of does, which was an encouraging sign because my favorite Coues deer area had a severe fire, the Woodbury fire, back about 4 years ago. So I covered a couple trails and saw a good deer sign, better habitat sign. So the last 2 years they've had some pretty good winter, spring rains, and so the habitat in that burned area is starting to come back. So I was pleasantly surprised to spot the number of deer I saw. I saw over 20 does and fawns, and I saw 4 bucks, 2 of which I would have considered a shooter buck, meaning it was 90 to 110 inch score-wise for a Coues deer buck. But anyway, I was glassing up those deer, trying to make a plan coming forth for the next day, and all of a sudden a shot rang out, and it was out in front of me. The deer were a half-mile away in my spotting scope, and then a second and a third shot went out. A couple minutes of silence, and then later a second rifle started firing, and that rifle fired 5 shots. Now, earlier coming in on the forest road, I noticed there was a pickup truck with Nevada plates parked back by the area where I thought those hunters might be shooting into the basins that I was glassing. And sure enough, it turned out that's what had occurred. So on my way out that afternoon, I came by that Nevada pickup truck, and I noticed 2 hunters standing there, one with bloodied hands, the other one looking kind of solemn. So I asked them what was going on, and one guy said they shot a nice, a big 3x3 with eye guards. He calls it an 8-point, but it's really a 3x3 with eye guards. And they were getting their pack frames, getting ready to go back the mile in and pack it out. I didn't mention to him that I watched pretty much or listened to the whole scenario of them shooting at the deer. Then I asked the center hunter how was his deer, and he said that the first 2 times he said he hit the deer, but they looked and looked and looked for 2 hours and they couldn't find the deer. So then I asked what was the range, and he said the range, the shooter for the second deer said his range was just around 650 yards. The first hunter said his range was 575 yards. And he hit the first deer was hit twice. The first shot was a hit, second shot was a miss, the third shot the deer went down for the count. The second deer his friend shot at 5 times. The first time it went down, got back up, and then they think they hit it a second time, but they weren't sure. Which made me think about a point. Whatever happened to hunting? Sitting on the hill where I was, a good 600 feet of elevation above the meadow where my Xterra was parked, I got to thinking, couldn't they have closed the distance? It was pretty early in the day, but no, they decided, they were going to shoot that long range. And I guess that's where hunting has really changed, and I don't believe in such a good way. And I'll lead into an example. I was at a sporting goods store here in Arizona, a Sportsman's Warehouse. And I went up to the counter, and everybody who was looking at rifle scopes were looking at the big, long-range rifle scopes that had dials on the top for elevation, dials for windage, I'm sure a dial for something else. And yet all the talk was having the capability to shoot 600, 700, 800, and one gentleman said 1,000 yards. Well, this really got my attention because I've been a hunter for 50 some odd years here, and I just realized how much hunting has changed, particularly in Arizona, where this long-range rifle shooting craze, as I'm going to call it, probably really got started. And listening to everybody shop and their comments and so on, I couldn't imagine shooting a Coues buck at 800 yards. I mean, these Coues deer are smaller subspecies of white-tailed deer. And a mature buck at 100 pounds on a hoof is a pretty good-sized buck body-wise. A lot of the deer, Coues deer I've taken here, Coues deer, they've been in that 80-pound range. And I can't imagine that small of a target out there at 800 yards. But I guess that's why they're looking at these 20 and 25 power scopes, because they want to shoot that distance, provided they have the cartridge. And then I got to thinking, it's not so much capability, but what about a hunter's ability to shoot that range? And I'll be honest, in my honest opinion, I think maybe only 5% of these people out there shooting at ranges over 600 yards have the practiced ability to make a good, clean killing shot on a Coues deer at those ranges. I think very few. And now the same goes for the modern archers. I limit my distance on shots at game to about 70, 75 yards max with my compound bow and arrow setup. And that's if I have good conditions. If I've got a 10-mile-an-hour wind, I am not going to shoot 70 yards with my bow and arrow. I will try to close the distance rather than risk making a bad shot. Because there's so many things that can go wrong shooting an arrow. Not just the wind and the temperature affecting the flight of the arrow as well, but your form has to be perfect time after time, or not perfect, but consistent to your ability. And if that animal moves ever so slightly and your shot is off 4 to 6 inches, that can result in a horrible bad shot. And I've found a few deer, but many more bull elk I found here in Arizona out in the woods, dead with an arrow still sticking in them. But it's sticking in their paunch or their stomach or some god-awful place. And the animal runs off only to die an agonizing death months, weeks, days, weeks, or months later. But in the great outdoors, nothing goes to waste. I'm sure predators and other birds and such probably clean up the carcasses, so nothing really goes to waste. But when we're hunting, we should not only respect ourselves and our own abilities, but we should respect the game we're after. And I looked at that second hunter's face and the dejection on his face, and I mentioned to him, well, you know, when you go back and you get some meat, why don't you spend another hour or two and search for that second deer? But they were convinced it was lost. And it's sad. And some guys say, well, that's hunting. Stuff happens. I disagree with that. I disagree with 99% of that statement that it's hunting and crap happens. When you pull the trigger and you take that shot, you take that responsibility to make the shot. To make the shot. So there's very few excuses. Have I lost deer? Yes, I have. I've lost 2 deer. Hunting, one with a rifle, one with an arrow. Because I didn't make the right shot. So yes, this does occur in the real world of hunting. But listening to those people talk in the sporting goods store and listening to these 2 guys describe their shooting and having watched them shoot from about a half a mile away through my spotting scope, I just can't help but think, you know, as hunters, we have a ethical as well as a moral conviction to ourselves and to the animals. And I just can't imagine how many people out there are going to a sporting goods store, buying a high-powered, high-caliber rifle, buying a scope, thinking they're going to go out there, dial it in at 100 or 200 yards, and then proceed to shoot 5, 6, 7, 800 yards. And God help the deer if they're shooting at 1,000 yards. So that's my opinion, and I'll leave it at that. But stay tuned. I've got some videos coming up to list on the Mavs Outdoor Adventures YouTube channel, showing the Coues deer hunts. And then the rest of the month of January here, I'm going to be doing my favorite hunt of the year, and that's the over-the-counter archery desert mule deer buck hunt. And hopefully I can catch some of those big mule deer bucks in the rut. And that's my favorite hunt of the entire year. That being said, the earlier content was just my opinion, and that's all. A special thanks to those subscribers to the channel, and to you viewers. As you watch future videos come up, please hit the thumbs up icon. And again, thanks for tuning in and watching. All right, everybody. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, and may 2024 bring a lot more great experiences for you in your adventures and quests in the great outdoors.